on question 13, it says, how many solutions does this system of equations shown below have? Well, to see how many solutions it has, if they cross one time, that means that there's one solution. If I graph a graph and it falls right on top of another one, that means it has infinitely many solutions. But if I graph a system of equations and the two lines are parallel, that means that they never cross and they never share a point. Therefore, there are no solutions to this. So which one says no solutions or zero solutions would be A? 0 and no, same thing. Right, let's go to 14. 14 says a recent survey of businesses found that companies with larger gross revenues spend more money on transportation. So this means this. What is a revenue? A revenue is the money you bring in. So this company brings in a whole bunch of money, right? And so because bringing in a whole bunch of money, does that cause them to spend more money on transportation? You think? Because you bring in money, does that cause you to do this? Would it be a causation or an association? That's kind of what it's leading to. So that's what the question's asking. What does the survey suggest about the relationship between these two quantities? Just because you bring in a lot of money doesn't cause you to spend a lot of money, right? You probably bring in a lot of money because you're smart of how you do things. So I find ways to spend less on transportation if I bring in more money, maybe. Okay, so one thing doesn't cause the other one. So remember causation and association, those will be on the test. So is this a causation? No. Is this an association? More than likely it is. So an association can be also known as a correlation in data. I think that the data might correlate to that, which means that if I spend more money, right, I might be making more money, or as I bring in more money, I could be doing what? I could be spending more on transportation, but it doesn't cause it to happen. Therefore, this would be a correlation in the data without a causation, because one did not cause the other one to happen. So if I really want to be specific, this is a correlation that is also called an association. Okay, so the best answer choice there would be G. It's a correlation without causation. Okay? So there might be a correlation in the data, and that data might suggest that, but it didn't cause it, is what that means. All right, let's look at 15. Which inequality represents the graph below? Now, this is just from what we got through doing in lesson 4 or 5. How do you graph an inequality? Okay, well, where's the shading? It's above it or below that boundary line? It's where? Above it. So then that means that my shading would be above, which means greater than, or it's greater than or equal to if I shade above a line. Now, I have to look at the line. If it's a dashed line, it's not going to be an equal to, because those are solid lines. So I know that this is going to be y is greater than whatever the equation of that boundary line is. What is the equation of that boundary line? Well, just tell me the slope and the y-intercept, and I plug it into slope-intercept form. So I just have to find the slope, put that in front of the x, and then add the y-intercept. Find those two values, and I know the inequality. Okay? And the inequality would just be, well, what's the slope of that line? We'll find 2 points on the line that it goes through. Very good, like this one. And it goes through that point there. Right? If I want to find another point, there's another point. If I want to find another point, there's another point. And then find out my rise over my run from one point to the next. So to get from this point to this point, or this point to this point, I went down 2, right 1, down 2, right 1, down 2, right 1, every single time. Same thing as going up 2, left 1, up 2, left 1. So what is my slope? -2. My rise is down 2, right 1, means in the positive direction. So I know this is a -2x, and then just tell me my y-intercept. What does this graph cross the y-axis? It's at a +4. So I'm looking for the inequality that says y is greater than a -2x plus 4, which is answer choice what? Okay, everybody get that? Okay, so let's go to question 16. Is that where I'm at? Yeah, 16. What's the solution to this system of linear equations? So I give you a picture of a system of linear equations by a graph, and the solution is the intersection of those 2 points. You just got to tell me, where do they cross? See how easy that is? That hopefully will be one easy on the test tomorrow over all this stuff. So where's that crossing? It's at x is what? -1. Y is -1. So that's F. We good so far? Let's look at 17. Which of the following is an example of a line that passes through the point -1, 4 and perpendicular to the equation of the graph y is equal to 4x minus 3? Guys, these are always on the EOCs. We're going to see a lot of these. Okay? So we've already done that in chapter 3. What's the easiest way to write this equation? Write it in slope-intercept form, standard form, or point, since I'm given a point, slope, since I know what the slope of a line perpendicular to this would be. What's the slope of a line perpendicular to this one going to be? Well, the slope of this one is what? 4, and then the y-intercept's -3, so it's something like this. Well, I want this to be perpendicular to it. So I know that this line that's perpendicular to it, its slope must be the what? Do y'all remember? The negative flip of that slope. So the slope of this line is 4. The slope of this line is the opposite of 4, which is a negative, because the opposite of a positive is a negative, and then flip the 4 upside down. So it's -1/4. So how do I write the equation now that I know the slope of this line is -1/4 and it goes through this point? You plug it into the point slope form, which is y minus the y coordinate of the point is equal to the slope of that line, okay, and then times x minus the x coordinate of that point on that line. Well, what is the x and the y coordinate of the point on that line? Well, x is -1, so that -1 is going right there where that x is. My y is a 4, so that's going right there where that y is. And I plug in that slope right there for n. And then now solve the equation and put it in what form is my answer in? Slope-intercept form. That's it. You just got to be able to solve it for y now. So this would be y minus the y coordinate of the point is what? 4 is equal to the slope of this line that's perpendicular to this line would be a -1/4 times x minus the x coordinate. So this would be x minus, what's the x coordinate of this point? -1. What's x minus a -1? What's your rule for subtraction? Add the opposite. So to clean this up, this is nothing more than y minus 4 is equal to a -1/4 times x plus 1. And that is an equation, but like I said, these are not in that form. This is in slope-intercept form. So can you just get y by itself here? If you can get the y by itself and solve this equation, you've got it in slope-intercept form. So to do that, all I've got to do is to get that 4 over here on this side. So jump it across the equal to sign. So now I have y by itself on the left side, but when I jump that 4 across the equal to sign and put it back here behind it, it becomes it changes its sign. So it's no longer a -4, it's a +4. So this would be -1/4 times x plus 1 and then plus 4. Now I still don't see it in that form because I've got to distribute now and combine like terms. After I distribute that 1/4 through and combine like terms, I'll have my answer. So if I distribute this through, I have to take -1/4 times x, which is what? -1/4 x. And then a -1/4 times a +1. What's a -1/4 times a +1? Negative what? 1/4 plus that 4. Now just combine those like terms. Guess that's not hard to do because your calculator will do that if you don't know. So watch. If I want to combine those like terms now, let me just go to my calculator. And I'm combining a -1/4, right, plus 4. And so I get 15/4. Positive or negative? Positive. 15/4. So my equation is y is equal to -1/4 x plus 15/4. 15/4. You got it? When I combine those, my calculator told me it's 15/4. So which answer choice says that? -1/4 x plus 15/4 is B. You got it? Any questions about that? Point slope form. You're going to see that for parallel lines and perpendicular lines on your test. I already did this earlier in the lesson too. In the first video link, right here, we had to do the same thing for two parallel lines that goes through that point. So if you need help with that, go back and look at 12 too. It'll be on the first video link that I'll send you. All right, let's look at 18. Here's from lesson 4, chapter 4. The whole chapter 4, you're going to have questions like this on the EOC as well. As a matter of fact, this company that wrote this, Pearson, is the same one that helps write the EOC. So here's an example of a word problem that's dealing with a system of equations. Suppose you have 20 coins that total $4. How many coins do you have? 20. What type of coins are they? Nickels and quarters. So that means I got some nickels plus some quarters, and this N represents the number of nickels and the Q represents the number of quarters. And when I add them together, I have to have a total of how many? 20. That's my first equation. Bring it up here. Okay? So there's my first equation. What's my second equation? Well, it's the value of those. Well, what's the value of a nickel? What's a nickel worth? 5 cents. Which is what part of a dollar? See, this is in dollars, so I have to write that as a dollar. It's 5/100ths of a dollar. 5 cents. So it's 0.05 times N. Plus a quarter's worth 25 cents, so that's 0.25 of a dollar. Right, so we write it in dollars as 0.25. Right, 0.05. And that's equal to my $4. There's my system of equations. This is all this is asking for. Just like on the EOC sometimes. It'll just say, find the right system of equations. So which one's the right one? Well, it's not this one, obviously, because the nickels and the quarters is not 4. Hey, G looks good. Nickels and the quarters is 20. G looks good. Oh, that's another G. That probably should be a J. I don't know why it says G twice. Alright, so it's got to be a J. I guess there's just an error on the printing. Okay, so it's either this G or this J. It looks good so far. So which one has the right values? Well, N plus Q is not 4, right? That's not the value of it. A nickel's worth 5 cents. If we have 1 nickel, it's 5 cents. 2 nickels is 10 cents. 3 nickels would be 15 cents. And 4 quarters would be $1, right? So that doesn't show me the value, so there's no way it's that. So why is it J? J is correct. Why is it J? J doesn't look like mine. What did they do in J that's different than what we did? We have ours in dollars. They put theirs in what? Excuse me. They put theirs in pennies. So this is like saying 5 pennies. Plus, how many pennies are in a quarter? 25 pennies is equal to, hey, $4 is how many pennies? Each dollar is 100 pennies, is it not? So if you got a $4, that would be how many pennies? 400. That means the exact same thing as what we have. Those two are the exact same equations. So the correct answer here would be what? The second G, which really should be a J. Alright, let's try to get these 4 done. And then I'll give you the rest of the class period to work on this on your own. An internet cafe charges $2.75 to use a computer and 35 cents per minute while accessing the internet. The function C of M is equal to $2.75, which is what? A flat fee for the computer plus 35 cents per each what? Minute. Represents the total cost. What's the cost of using this for 28 minutes? Guys, all you got to do is plug in the 28 where? For your minutes and solve it. So let's do that in the calculator. So my cost is equal to $2.75 plus my 35 cents per each minute that I'm on the computer, which is 28 minutes, right? So I just plug in a 28 for that M and hit enter, and I got my answer. So it should be $12.55. Any questions there? So our calculator can do the math for us, and it even knows the order of operation. What about 20? The table below shows amounts earned for walking a dog. The rate of change in dollars per day. What is the rate of change in dollars per day? So in this table, I have day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And this is the cost for day 1. This is the cost for day 2. This is the cost for day 3. This is the cost for day 4. Now, if I want to find rate of change, this is just the rate at which you're charging somebody for walking a dog per day. It's the same thing as the slope, which is the same thing as the change in y over the change in x. Or y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So if you want to find out what the slope of this is, all I got to do is figure out how this is changing. From 13 to 26 is an increase of what? $13 over the course of how many days? 1 day. As this went up by 1 day. From 26 to 39 is an increase of $13 as this increased by what? 1 day. So what are you charging? $13 for 1 day, $13 for 1 day. If I were to take 52 minus 39, if I take 52 minus 39, that's also an increase of $13 per every what? 4 minus 3 is 1. That's the change in y over the change in x. 13 over 1. 13 over 1. See how it's constantly the same thing? So I have a constant rate of change, which is what? 13? I can't just put 13. This has meaning. This would be $13 what? Per day. It's 2 units. Dollars days. Dollars per day. You can also write it this way. This is $13 per every 1 what day. But you got to have units in it with rates. Slope, we can just put a number. It's describing the tilt. But rate of change, which really is kind of the same thing as slope, has to be described with units. Because I need to know how much is it per 1 of those units. Alright, 21. It says a cell phone company offers 2 different monthly text messaging plans as shown in the table below. For what number of text messages will both plans cost the same? Okay? So what we need to do is figure out when is the plan A equal to the cost of plan B. So when is the cost of A equal to the cost of B? Well, how do I figure out the cost of A? I need to write a cost function. Well, it's a $35 monthly fee and it's 10 cents per minute, so what would the equation be? $35 plus what? 10 cents per minute. And that's equal to the cost of A. So what's the cost of this plan B? Well, it's $18 for a monthly fee, so we'll just say that's the cost of A. This is the cost of B. It would be $18 plus 30 cents per minute. How do I figure out when these are equal to each other? Couldn't I graph one function and graph the other function, and wherever they cross is the point? The x and the y, which represents the minutes and the cost. Right? And x representing the minutes, y is representing. So you can graph it to solve it, or I can just use substitution to solve it. How do I use substitution to solve it? A cost is equal to B cost. If A costs 35.10 M, when is it equal to the cost of B, which is 18 plus 0.3 M? I don't care how you solve it. If you want to graph it and say that's Y and that's X and that's Y and that's X and see where they cross here, you can. Or I could just plug it in and solve that equation. So I get my variables on one side by subtraction 18. And 35 minus 18 is what? 17. Plus 0.1 M is equal to 0.3 M. I subtract the 0.1 M, 0.1 M. Let me just make sure my math is right. 35 minus 18. Okay, and then subtract, so I get 17 is equal to 3 minus 0.1 is a 0.2 M. Now divide by 0.2, divide by 0.2. So how many minutes would you talk for the cost to be the same? Well, just take your 17 and divide by 0.2. And it'd be what? 85. So that costs. So for what number of text messages, or I said minutes, it should have been text messages, sorry. Well, both plans cost the same if you have 85 what? Texts. You got it? Give me 1 second. Alright, so 22. What's the slope of the line? Just find 2 points to find the rise over the run. Here's a point. Here's a point. I rise up 1, 2, 3. So that's up 3. That's my rise. Over my run. So if I rose up 1, 2, 3 and go to the right 1, that's in a positive direction. 1. So my rise over my run is what? 3. So the slope of the line is simply just 3. And you can just leave that as a number. Y'all good with that? Okay, so that would get you through every answer. You should make 100 on this if you watch the videos and write down the answers and understand how to do this. So it'd be a good grade for y'all.